In 1936, a tenant farmer named Walter Caudill kept a family of 7 alive on $11 a week in the Oklahoma panhandle. The dust had buried his fences, his wheat had failed 3 years running, he owned no land, he owed the furrow store for seed. He watched neighbors load their trucks and drive west toward California with everything they owned roped to the running boards. Walter stayed. That winter, not one of his 5 children went a single day without a meal. His wife patched the same 3 dresses for 2 years straight. When the relief workers came through Cimarron County, counting the starving, they marked the Caudill place and moved on. The family was thin. The family was not broken. What kept them standing was not luck. It was not a government check. It was a set of rules. Rules so plain that the modern world would now call most of them illegal, unsanitary, or insane. Most of America has never heard a single one. The men who made the laws against them are long dead. The rules still work. They did not manage money the way we do, not with apps, not with credit. They managed it with habits, carved in by a hunger most of us will never feel. Those habits carried families through dust, drought, and years with no crop and no cash at all. We let go of nearly every one, not because they stopped working, because they made us feel poor, and we would rather feel comfortable and owe the bank everything. We did not lose these tricks by accident. We buried them. Some were shamed out of us at the supermarket door. Some were regulated out of existence by men who never went hungry. And some we simply threw away the moment the dust settled and the easy money came back. They did not vanish. They were taken, and the taking was sold to us as progress. Number 19 on this list saved a Dust Bowl family an entire season of grocery money, and not 1 cent of it ever reached a store. Number 8 was so common in the 1930s that health inspectors later wrote it into law as a crime, and families still do it quietly today. And number 1, the rule these families guarded above every other, kept more households off the relief rolls than any program Washington ever printed, and it was passed down in a single sentence a child could memorize. These 25 tricks were never about being cheap. They were about staying free. Free from the store ledger, free from the next dust storm, free from the terror that one more failed crop could scatter the family across 3 states. These were not the habits of the desperate. They were the habits of the unbroken. Hit that subscribe button. Let us count down the 25 banned tricks a Dust Bowl family used to survive on $11 a week. Number 25, the dugout pantry, the grocery store that lived under the kitchen floor. You dug a pit beneath the house, lined it with planks, and kept potatoes, turnips, and jars of canned beans where the heat could not reach. The earth held a steady cool no money could buy. A family that filled that pit in fall did not shop again until spring. For a panhandle mother in 1935, that hole in the ground was not a root cellar. It was the line between feeding 5 children and watching them go hungry. Across the southern plains, farm agents recorded thousands of these dugout stores during the drought years, built by families with no ice and no money for any. It was not poverty. It was preparation. She did not buy the winter. She buried it before the frost came.
Before we go on, I made something special for you. Guides for people like us who still believe the old ways mattered. They're the forgotten money habits our grandparents lived by, tricks that could save you thousands a year. But this knowledge is disappearing. And once it's gone for good. I've put together 2 books for you, plus a free bonus. Scan the QR code on screen now, or click the link below. I'll wait right here.
Number 24, the dust loaf, the bread baked thin and stretched to feed twice the mouths. When flour ran short, you cut it with cornmeal, water, and a little lard until a 5-cent loaf became 2. The bread was dense. The bread was filling. It sat in a stomach the way white store bread never could. A Cimarron County woman fed 7 on a single batch that cost her under a dime. Extension bulletins from Oklahoma, A&M in the 1930s, openly taught women to stretch wheat flour with cheaper grains because the state knew the wheat itself had failed. Her children called it heavy bread and never knew it was hunger talking. They did not eat less. They made the little they had go further. Number 23, Risoling with rubber. The shoes that outlasted 3 children because they were never thrown away. When a sole wore through, you cut a new one from an old tire and tacked it to the leather. A worn-out boot became a working boot for the cost of nothing. A father in Texas County kept his only pair of work shoes alive for 9 years this way. Across the Dust Bowl, cobblers nearly went out of business, not because nobody needed shoes, but because every man had learned to mend his own. His sons learned the trick before they learned to read. They did not buy new shoes. They refused to surrender the old ones. Number 22, the Jackrabbit Drive, the free meat that ran wild across the dying plains. When the crops failed, the rabbits multiplied, and a family that could not afford beef ate what the dust could not kill. Whole communities drove the rabbits into pens and shared the meat by the wagon load. A pound of beef cost 20 cents in 1936. A jackrabbit cost a shotgun shell and an afternoon. Contemporary newspapers recorded panhandle rabbit drives that gathered thousands of animals in a single day, organized by towns desperate to feed themselves. A Beaver County family ate rabbit 4 nights a week and called themselves lucky. They did not go without meat. They took what the ruined land still offered. Number 21, the flour sack dress. The wardrobe sewn from what the food came wrapped in. Mills printed their flour sacks in floral patterns because they knew exactly what the women did with them. You washed the sack, picked out the seams, and cut a dress, a shirt, or a set of curtains. A dress that cost $2 at the store cost only the flour you already needed. By the late 1930s, the practice was so universal that flour companies competed on print designs to win the sewing trade. A Cimarron County girl wore the same print to church and to the field and never once felt poor. They did not buy cloth. They wore the bag the flour came in. Number 20, the shared churn. The butter and buttermilk that came from one cow and fed 4 families. When a single family could not keep a cow alive on dead pasture, neighbors pooled their feed and shared the milk by turns. One animal stretched across a whole road of households. A gallon of milk in town cost a dime a family could not always find. The shared cow cost only the agreement to share. Sharing livestock through drought was Old Plains practice, recorded as far back as the homestead years, when one animal often meant the difference between a settled claim and an abandoned one. A widow near Boise City kept her children in milk for 2 years this way. They did not each buy a cow. They divided one between them. Number 19, the wild greens harvest, the vegetables that grew for free in the ditches. When the garden burned in the heat, you walked the fence lines and gathered lamb's quarter, dandelion, and wild mustard by the basket. These weeds carried more iron and vitamins than anything in a store. A family that knew which plants to pick ate green all summer for nothing. Government nutritionists sent into the Dust Bowl during the relief years were startled to find that foraging families often showed fewer deficiency diseases than those who relied on store food. A mother in Texas County fed her children off the roadside and kept away the scurvy that took weaker families. They did not grow every vegetable. They knew which ones grew themselves. Number 18. The coffee that was never coffee. The morning cup brewed from roasted grain and chicory root. Real coffee cost money a Dust Bowl family did not have, so they roasted barley, wheat, or dried carrots until brown, then ground it like beans. The cup was bitter. The cup was hot. It cost nothing but the grain already in the bin. Grain coffee was no Dust Bowl invention. Southern families had brewed chicory through every shortage since the Civil War, and the drought generation simply reached back for it. A grandmother in Cimarron County drank her grain coffee for 30 years and refused the real thing even when she could afford it. They did not give up the morning cup. They brewed it from the field instead. Here is the part the history books skip. A Dust Bowl family did not measure wealth by what they could buy. They measured it by what they could outlast. The man down the road who borrowed for a new truck lost it the day the bank called. The man who patched the old one kept moving. Every dollar spent was weighed against the next dust storm, the next failed crop, the next winter with no income at all. They did not budget. They rationed a future they were not certain they would get. 1 in 4 farm families on the southern plains was driven off the land in those years. The ones who stayed were rarely the ones who earned more. They were the ones who needed less. The dust did not choose who survived. The habits did. And the families who held hardest to the old plain rules were the ones still standing on their own ground when the rains finally returned. Number 17. The 2-day wait. The rule that killed every impulse before it cost a dime. Before you spent on anything that was not food, seed, or medicine, you waited 2 days. If you still needed it after the wait, you bought it. If you had forgotten, you had your answer. A man who had lost a crop to dust did not trust his own wanting. This was the same discipline that crash survivors of 1929 carried for the rest of their lives, a refusal born of watching everything vanish once already. A Beaver County farmer kept a nickel in his pocket a week rather than spend it the day the urge struck. They did not buy on impulse. They made the want prove itself first. Number 16. The soap from ash and fat. The cleaning supply made from what the kitchen threw away. You saved wood ash and bacon grease all year, boiled them together, and poured the lye soap into a pan to harden. A bar that cost a nickel at the store cost only the scraps you already had. The soap was harsh. The soap was strong. It washed clothes, dishes, and children alike. Homemade lye soap was frontier knowledge older than Oklahoma statehood, carried west by the same families the drought now tried to starve. A panhandle mother made a year of soap in a single afternoon each spring. They did not buy soap. They rendered it from the leavings. Number 15. The patched and turned coat. The single garment that lived 3 lives. When a coat wore thin on the outside, you unstitched it, turned the cloth inside out, and sewed it back together so the unworn side faced the weather. One coat became as good as new for an evening's work. Tailors had turned worn cloth this way since long before the machine age, and Depression mothers revived the craft out of pure need. A Texas county boy wore his father's turned coat, then watched his mother turn it again for his brother. They did not replace the worn coat. They flipped it and started over. Number 14. The penny seed exchange. The garden that cost nothing because the neighbors traded. Nobody bought a full packet of every seed. You bought one, grew it out, saved the seed, and traded with the family down the road for theirs. A nickel of seed, shared across a community, planted a dozen gardens. Seed saving was the plains norm. until commercial seed companies and later hybrid crops made buying every spring the rule. A Cimarron County woman kept a tin of saved seed labeled in pencil and never bought a packet twice. They did not purchase the garden. They grew it from last year's and traded for the rest. Number 13, the chicken that paid the grocer, the hen that turned scraps into store credit. A few hens ate the kitchen scraps and the bugs in the yard, and their eggs went to town for sugar, salt, and coffee. The eggs a family did not eat became the cash a family did not have. A dozen eggs traded for 15 cents of goods in 1936. Rural stores across the plains ran on egg credit through the entire Depression, with the hen flock serving as the household bank. A Beaver County wife kept her family in staples on eggs alone. They did not spend cash at the store. They paid in what the hens laid. Number 12, the barter circle, the whole economy that ran without a single dollar. A man who could fix a harness traded the work for a sack of cornmeal. A woman who could sew took eggs and lard for a dress. Money that never changed hands could never be taxed, spent, or borrowed against. When cash itself nearly disappeared from the countryside in 1933, whole communities kept functioning on trade alone. A Texas county blacksmith kept no prices, only a memory of who owed what in labor, and died owning his shop free and clear. They did not buy and sell. They traded the work of their hands. Number 11, the rendered fat lamp, the light that burned on kitchen grease when the kerosene ran dry. When there was no money for lamp oil, you set a twist of cloth in a dish of melted fat and lit it. The flame was small. The flame was free. It gave just enough light to mend by after dark. The grease lamp was ancient, used on the plains long before kerosene was cheap, and the drought sent families straight back to it. A Cimarron County family read scripture by a grease lamp through the worst winter of the decade. They did not sit in the dark. They burned what the kitchen already had. Now set the old way beside the new. The average American household today carries more than $6,000 in credit card debt and a car payment with no end. We call that normal. A Dust Bowl family on $11 a week owed the furrow store for seed and counted that debt a disgrace to be cleared by harvest. In 2021, researchers studying scarcity found something they did not expect. Adults raised with Depression-era habits carried lower debt and reported less money anxiety than any group they tested. The habits did not fail. They were correct. The Plains families were not poor in the way we imagine poor. They owned their tools, owed almost nothing, and could live a year with no income at all. By that measure, most of us today are poorer than a man who fed 7 on $11 a week. We did not abandon these habits because they stopped working. We abandoned them because they reminded us of being poor, and the bank was happy to lend us a way to forget. Number 10, the Mend It Day, the repair pile that always beat the new purchase. Every torn shirt, cracked handle, and broken tool went into a box, and one day a week the family fixed it all. A 10-cent spool of thread saved a $2 shirt a dozen times over. An old man in Texas County had a workbench where broken things went to be reborn. The motto was stitched into the whole generation: use it up, wear it out, make it do, or do without. He could not throw away what still had use in it. They did not replace what broke. They set aside a day to save it. Number 9, the double-duty water, the single bucket that washed everything in turn. Water hauled by hand was too precious to use once. You washed the dishes, then the floor, then carried the same water to the garden. Nothing went down a drain a plant could drink. On dry claims, where the nearest well was a mile off, water discipline was not thrift. It was survival, taught to every plains child the moment they could lift a pail. A panhandle family used every drop 3 times before the ground got it. They did not waste a bucket of water. They made it work until it was mud. Number 8, the home butchering. The meat raised, killed, and cured without a store or an inspector. Each fall, a family slaughtered its own hog, smoked the hams, ground the sausage, and rendered the lard. Nothing was wasted, and no butcher took his cut. The same meat from town ran 20 cents a pound a family could not spare. In the decades after, federal and state inspection laws made selling such home-cured meat a crime, and a practice every farm once relied on was pushed behind closed doors. A Beaver County family cured a winter of meat in a smokehouse the size of a closet. They did not buy the meat. They raised it and kept all of it. Number 7, the relief line refusal. The pride that kept a family off the rolls and out of the ledger. Many families took government relief and never shook the shame of the line. The Caudills refused it as long as they could stand. Every week not spent in that line was a week the family stayed its own master. Surveys from the era found that a striking number of plains families resisted relief until the very edge of ruin, viewing dependence as a deeper loss than hunger. A father in Cimarron County walked past the relief office 2 years rather than sign his name. They did not take the easy dollar. They guarded the one thing the dust could not take. Number 6, the shared thresher. The expensive machine no single family ever bought. A threshing machine cost more than a family earned in years, so no one bought one alone. The whole road bought one together, or one man owned it and worked every farm in turn for a share of the grain. The cost that would have broken a single family split a dozen ways. Threshing rings were a fixture of plains farming for generations, the original cooperative, long before any bank offered equipment loans. A Texas county crew moved farm to farm each harvest and paid no cash. They did not buy the machine. They shared the one the road already owned. Number 5, the cellar jar. The savings kept in glass, not banks, because the banks had failed. When the banks closed and the savings vanished, families stopped trusting them. What little cash a family kept went into a jar buried in the cellar, where no bank failure could reach it. The money earned no interest. The money was still there in the morning. After thousands of banks collapsed in the early 1930s, distrust of banks ran so deep across the countryside that cash in the cellar outlasted the crisis by decades. A Cimarron County widow kept her burial money in a bean jar for 15 years. They did not trust the bank with what little they had. They trusted the cellar floor. Number 4, the lunch pail swap. The trade that fed 2 children on what one had. Families with too little sent their children with what they could, and the children traded at school so each had a full meal. A child with bread and a child with an egg. Both ate better by sharing. The lunch cost the family nothing. It did not already grow. Country school teachers of the era often recorded the quiet barter among their pupils, an economy of children mirroring the one their parents ran at home. A Beaver County girl traded her cornbread for an apple every day for a year. They did not buy a school lunch. They traded their way to a full one. Number 3, pay the seed debt first. The bill that came before food, before everything. The furrow store carried the family on credit for seed, and that debt was paid the day the crop came in, before a dollar went anywhere else. A family that paid the seed store first kept its credit, and its credit kept it planting. The crop lien system bound plains tenants to the store for a century, and the only escape was to clear the debt the instant the harvest allowed. A Texas county farmer paid his store debt before he bought his children's shoes. They did not let the debt wait. They cleared it first and slept easier for it. Number 2, want less than you had. The discipline that sat underneath every other rule. Behind every trick on this list was one harder thing, wanting less than the little you held. No new thing was bought because a neighbor bought one. A family that did not crave could not be ruined by craving. For many Plains families, this was not only thrift, but faith, a plainness preached from the pulpit and practiced at the table. A Cimarron County preacher, asked how his people stayed calm with nothing, said they had learned to want what they already had. They did not chase more. They decided what enough was and stopped there. Number 1, owe no man you cannot pay. The simplest rule on the whole list, and the one they guarded above every other. You paid cash, or you did without, or you cleared the debt by harvest without fail. A debt you could not pay was a chain that handed your future to another man. This was old scripture and older sense, drilled into Plains children before they could read a ledger. Walter Caudill, the tenant farmer from the start of this list, owed only the seed store when the rains returned, and he cleared it that first good autumn. A family that owes nothing fears no bank, no rate, no bad season. Pay as you go. Owe no man you cannot pay. Stay free. None of these tricks required a high income, a banker, or a dollar these families did not already hold. They required attention, the willingness to look at money plainly, without shame and without fantasy. The people who survived the Dust Bowl understood something the rest of America has spent a century trying to forget. Comfort is not the same as security. Convenience is not the same as freedom. The ability to buy anything is worthless beside the ability to need almost nothing. They did not get rich. But a tenant farmer in the Oklahoma Panhandle fed 5 children on $11 a week, owed no man he could not pay, and walked out of the worst decade in American history with his family whole and his ground still under him. They called his rules backward. They called them banned. They wrote some of them into law as crimes and shamed the rest out of us at the store counter. And still, on his road, in his time, those rules did the one thing nothing we replaced them with has ever managed. They held. On that road, Walter Caudill was not the exception. He was the rule. They were never the poor ones. We were.